This set of stories is truly Kentucky Fried. I got a suggestion for some horror stories from Kentucky, and I thought that would be a fun read. We've got ghosts, we've got creeps, we've got all the things to make you lack sleep. Enjoy these allegedly true scary stories from Kentucky. Now let's begin. Not often do unexplainable things happen to me. It was this one occurrence, however, that stuck with me ever since it had happened. Sure, scary things have happened to me, like getting pulled over or going to the hospital. But that stuff is relatively common if ghosts and unexplainable creatures are out of the picture. Anyway, to give my story some background, I live in Kentucky, and I've always been a car enthusiast. Along with that, I've always aspired to be successful to the point where I would not have to work the standard 9 to 5. I've been in a self-made business for the past few years, and I think it's nothing short of a miracle how successful I've been. The first few years were absolute grinding without a doubt, but now I'm at a point where cash flow runs my budget. I'm thankful for all the blessings I've been given. But along with these blessings, crap has happened too. This happened when I turned 35, when I went ahead and bought my dream car with the money I had to spend, a 2018 Nissan GT-R Nismo. Man, is it a fast car. So fast and fun that I didn't feel 1 ounce of regret in spending the money I did for it. The wife wasn't exactly approving, but she's grown to enjoy driving it from time to time. Michael, my lifelong buddy, had owned a 2017 Mustang GT350 at the time. With the aftermarket exhaust setup he had, you'd go deaf being right next to it while redlining the machine. To say we liked cars would be an understatement. We loved him. Only thing that teed me off was when he ragged on me for driving an automatic, as his GT350 was manual. But I'd come right back at him with the classic Mustang joke, just stay away from crowds and you'll be just fine. Anyway, this incident happened one night while Michael and I were on a drive, cruising through the local back roads that we'd normally take on the weekends while neither of us were busy. I live in a country-oriented area surrounded by forest, which isn't too far from the suburbs. It's great having peace and quiet while also having the convenience to be able to drive 10 minutes to your local supermarket and whatnot. It was around 10 o'clock at night at that point. I was waiting for Michael to arrive. Finally, I heard the faint yet familiar roar of his engine a few miles away. The guy just loved flying in that thing. Honestly, I was surprised he hadn't gotten a ticket in the past 2 years of owning the car. He arrived and I went into my garage to fire up the GT-R. Even though it was a 6-cylinder, it still had an excellent tone to it. I backed out and he led the way down the long stretch of driveway. That day we took a route about 20 minutes away. This route was located in a really dense area of woods, plenty of curves and turns for us to enjoy. We'd often come here during the day to drive around solely because of the views as well. That night we decided we'd drive around this area for fun, and I would see if I could keep up with Michael, which was no problem. Looking back at it, I should have been the one leading. After driving for some time, it was midnight. We were on our way back to my house to finish the drive. We eventually came upon a mile stretch of straightaway back road, and this is where Michael tore away. He was full on sending it straight down the road, and I kept on his tail. I slowed down after hitting about 90 out of fear of hitting a deer or some sort of wildlife. Michael, however, disregarded anything that could stand in his way because he wanted to prove he was more daring than me. He had gotten a considerable distance away when I heard his brakes screech all of a sudden. He almost wiped out as he downshifted to a halt. I sped up a little at this point to catch up and see what the heck just happened. I thought to myself, that idiot had it coming going that fast. He probably almost hit a deer. As my car approached his, he sped off once again, driving like a psychopath. I called him on Bluetooth, and he picked up in an instant. He said, "Dude, my brakes just stopped working all of a sudden, and I saw these 2 figures in the road ahead. I was only able to brake as I swerved right past them, and then they dissolved." I had no idea what he was talking about, especially how he said them. Who were they? I got goosebumps as he said this, and I wasn't sure if he was trying to screw with me, but that just wouldn't have made sense. So I took him seriously. I asked what these figures looked like. Michael just said, they were in the middle of the road, just staring right at me. I couldn't really make out how they looked. I was going so fast, but they matched the statures of an adult. The two silhouettes appeared out of nowhere. The sinking feeling in my stomach was multiplied by 1,000. My brakes suddenly wouldn't work as I was slamming down on the pedal. As I was about to hit them and swerve, they went up into thin air. The two of us drove on for another minute, still on the phone, just trying to make sense of what happened. It was at this moment Michael said, "Oh crap, I see two people walking along the side of the road opposite of us. They were walking in the direction we were coming." As we drove nearer, the two silhouettes continued at their pace. We were going at a crawling speed of 20 miles an hour now, because Michael had been so shaken up at what just happened on the straightaway. He didn't have it in him to speed up as we passed these two now recognizable teenage-looking kids. They were ghostly pale, and their faces were emotionless. One boy and one girl, with ripped and tattered clothes on. It looked as if they'd been in an accident. Their bodies were disfigured and mangled, and yet they were walking flawlessly down the road. I swallowed hard as we passed them. These must be the same two people Michael had almost crashed into a few minutes ago. But I couldn't stop thinking of how they had gotten here. They stopped and stared at us as we drove by. As I rode past, I looked at them in my rearview mirror. They walked into the tree line, out of sight. I was holding back tears at this point in disbelief and nervousness. Suddenly, out of nowhere, two bright lights began to shine behind me. They belonged to some sort of car. I'm pretty sure it was an older Mercedes, but I wasn't quite sure. It was just too dark out to be completely certain. Whatever the car was, it had begun to ride my bumper. Michael noticed the car too and was exclaiming, "What the heck is this guy doing?" I responded, "Scared out of my wits. I don't know, man. Let's just get to the main road and off this back road." We had eventually gotten to the main road, and that's when the car made an abrupt halt. As we got onto the main road, we saw the car sit there motionless with its high beams still on. We drove on until the car became faint to the point of us not being able to see it. It had never moved. We soon got back to my house and started a fire in the backyard. I brought out my wife, and we explained the whole incident to her. She was clearly just as disturbed as us once we had finished explaining the whole thing. We all kind of just sat there, contemplating all of this. It had grown real late at this point, and Michael had decided to go back home. Emotionally distraught, I quietly led him out to his car, and we had made plans to meet up at some point in the future. Fast forward a few days later, I was driving on the very road where everything took place just to check things out. It was around noon when I noticed something I'd never seen before. Even though I'd driven this road many times, I was not aware of the cross I'd seen on the side of the road as I drove through the straightaway this time. I stopped the car and studied the cross through my window. It was a roadside memorial, yet it didn't seem to be for one person. There were two people, a boy and a girl. Tears were streaming down my eyes at this point, and I felt an unnerving feeling of unease as I sat in my car, which was stopped in the middle of the now desolate straightaway. I didn't hesitate to drive cautiously out of that area. I shivered so hard the way home that I had trouble driving around corners and keeping my hands firm on the steering wheel. Ever since that day, nothing has really happened to me. I told Michael about the cross, and he vowed he'd never be going on that back road again, whether it be day or night. When I think about it, all I feel is confusion and apprehension. I tried reading the names on the cross, but the whole memorial was just too worn down. I haven't been back on that road since then, neither to check on that cross, nor to see if anything strange would happen. Quite frankly, I'm just too scared. The way Michael reacted that night shook me. He's a confident guy, but the way he reacted on that road was like none other. It really made me realize the emotional toll that experience had on him. When he vowed to never drive that road again, he also vowed to never be as reckless as he was that night ever again on a public road. Sure, a promise is only a promise, but it ultimately comes down to the man who made it. I've seen something incredible happen. My friend has stuck with that promise ever since he made it. The whole incident messed with him to the point of selling his car. That's how much it reminded him of that freakish night. I really don't blame him. I get goosebumps whenever I think back to it. Since then, he's transferred to a simple WRX. Still fun, but not at all as fast. Especially with his younger daughter now, he figured he might as well get a car that is more family-friendly. In a way, what happened humbled each of us. No matter how hard you try, you can never be 100% ready for the unknown. We've done our best to make peace with the event, and all I can say personally is I've been a more considerate driver since that day forward. The caution I now exercise on the road has made me realize something. Call me crazy, but I believe they saved our lives, even if it wasn't their goal that night. This driving destroys people and their families. As ominous as the incident seemed at first, I've started to look at it in a different perspective. They saved us from ourselves, regardless of what they were attempting to do that night. I've taken my lesson out of it. I've no idea where I would be today if this hadn't happened. More importantly, I don't know where my best friend would be. With the way he had driven before that point, he was bound to have something happen to him. Bad habits carry on throughout life, and only serious events and dedication can change those habits for the better. Always be aware of the lessons we're given throughout life. These are important and teach us to be better people to the ones around us and ourselves. It was another long and stressful day at Culver's in Florence, Kentucky. By this time, it was around 10:30 p.m. on a Saturday. This was during the summer, so we kept the restaurant open until 11 on weekends. Normally, we stopped getting customers around 9:30. We're usually able to start up the closing procedures then. I was assigned to close down dining that night. The job consisted of wiping down tables, sweeping, mopping, vacuuming, and any other jobs the managers and shift leaders wanted me to complete. I was wiping down the booth located to the right of the main entrance when I heard the all-too-familiar swishing sound of the glass doors opening. I rolled my eyes and sighed. Great, I thought. Now I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing and take this guy's order. To clarify, I'm not a people person at all. I tend to get very easily annoyed by the way people act and treat others. So I clearly was not looking forward to putting on a fake smile and listening to someone else talk down to me, like most customers do at this restaurant. "Hello, sir," I said in my fake employee voice. "How can I help you tonight?" I felt dizzy for a moment as I tried to focus on the customer. It felt like I had a static change in location. I was disgusted at the sound of my overly optimistic tone. The man looked to be in his late 60s or early 70s. He had a stubby-looking white goatee on his chin and a tan windbreaker on. He also wore an old 1940s newsboy cap, or pancake cap as I like to call them, on top of his balding head. The man didn't reply. What a jerk, I thought. He stood there for a good 5 minutes, blankly staring at the menu. I was getting ready to go restock the cups when the thin old man finally spoke. His tone chilled me. His voice was raspy and sounded like he had sandpaper stuck in his vocal cords. "What's good here?" Every word he said sounded like it came from a tunnel. It echoed and sounded very distant. Not only was this guy disrupting my closing process at 10:55, but he's never been here before. "I prefer the double deluxe butter burger," I said. I gave him the most generic answer I could think of. He makes an awkward grumble sound as a way to respond to me. I sat at the register, impatiently waiting for him to order so I could finish closing and leave. He finally shuffles to the register and starts to place his order. "I think I'll have a..." He stopped in the middle of his sentence as he looked over to register one. That night, a coworker of mine, M, had logged onto the register while I was taking the man's order. He looked at me and snarled, "Ah, forget it. I'm going over to her." At first, I was teed off because of the unnecessary tone he had used with me. But then I noticed a yellow toothy smile as he walked over to M's register. "Wow, aren't you an awful birdie," he said. Once he uttered those disgusting words, a million different red flags popped up. I stood by the register and carefully eavesdropped the conversation. "Would you like to come eat dinner with me?" The man's face looked like a hungry lion getting ready to pounce and tear apart an innocent zebra. M's eyes widened in fear. "I'm sorry, sir," she uttered. "I have to work." The man's face quickly shifted into a pure look of frustration. Well, if they ever let you have a break, come on over and sit with me. Em swiftly nodded her head, avoiding all eye contact with this freak. Once he sat down, I went over to Em and asked if she was okay. She told me in a very serious tone that she got a very uncomfortable feeling about that guy. Me too, I said. If he comes up here again, I want you to go to the back and stay there until he's gone. She agreed, and we finished up closing. We were all ready to lock up and leave, but we couldn't. We couldn't because that weirdo was still here. After what seemed like an eternity, he waddled over to throw his tray away. Please just walk out, please, I pleaded in my head. But it never works out that way, does it? He turns and makes a beeline for the counter. I glanced over at him and mouthed the words, "Get into the back." As soon as I turned around, the man was already behind the counter. "Sir, you can't be back here," I said in a stern voice. He just ignored me and kept his focus on M. He took a few more strides past me. I quickly ran to catch up. Before he could get to M, I jumped in between the two of them. "Sir, you need to leave now or I'm calling the cops," I told him. He doesn't even acknowledge my presence. He looks over my shoulder like I'm not even there. Once more, he cracked that hideous yellow smile. I could smell the tobacco he had put in his lip. "Have a good night, sweetheart. Sure can't wait to come back and see you again." He walked out from behind the counter and out the door, not taking his dark eyes off of M. I looked out the windows as I watched his old beat-up pickup pull out of the parking lot. I kept an eye on it until his taillights faded into the darkness. That night, I walked Em out to her car and made sure it was safe. Shortly after the incident, Em quit her job and moved away. I don't blame her. I can't imagine what kind of sick plans this monster had with my friend. What if I had left earlier than I was supposed to? What if he wasn't even human at all? What if he was still lurking in the shadows, waiting until she was all alone? These thoughts haunt me. Thank God he left without hurting anyone. I still keep up with them, and she seems to be safe. Just a warning to all restaurant employees in the greater Cincinnati area, especially women, there's a creep out there who preys on young employees. Make sure you're always on guard, because unfortunately, not everyone is as lucky as Em. Story number 3. In the winter of 2011, I got a call from my then-girlfriend telling me that her father had taken sick and was taken to the hospital. She had to go right away, but her kids would soon be getting off the school bus, and I was to bring them to the hospital because they needed to see their grandfather. This might be the last time they got to see him. I went to her house and picked up the kids, a 17-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. They already knew what was going on, as their mother had called them before I arrived. So I got them in the car and started on the 20 to 25-minute drive. It wasn't very far to the Cumberland Parkway, here in south-central Kentucky. So I then got on the parkway to go to the next town, as that's where they had taken my girlfriend's father. What was the hospital her father's doctor was based at? It was cold and rainy, and darkness had already fallen, as it does around 5 p.m. that time of year in the winter here. As I neared the exit to get off the parkway, I saw a tall man that looked over 6 feet tall, walking in the emergency lane, about 8 to 10 feet away from the white fog line, in a duster-like long coat, a floppy hat, and boots. It was walking at a fast pace, and I remember thinking, what a terrible night to be out. I began to switch to the left lane for safety's sake, and not to splash water on this guy, but then he just disappeared. I mean, he didn't fade away or go poof or anything like that. He was just gone. It was like watching a movie frame for frame, and he was just taken out of the next frame, and we weren't supposed to see it. I was already halfway in the left lane when my girlfriend's 17-year-old said, "Did you just see that?" We began to describe the man to each other, just to be sure we saw the same thing. Same tall guy, same coat, boots and hat, and the same disappearing act. The 8-year-old in the back seat was small even for his age, and he didn't see anything, because he couldn't see over the front seat. The exit for the hospital was less than half a mile away, and when I got off the parkway, there was a state trooper at a BP station, and I wanted to stop and tell him what happened. But my girlfriend's daughter insisted that we go on to the hospital, because the trooper would think that we were drunk. crazy or on drugs or something, and he would delay us getting to the hospital. After really thinking about it, there was no way the guy jumped off the side of the road without us seeing him. I swear he just disappeared from existence right in front of us. And I'll take this to my grave. We got to the hospital, we told my girlfriend's family what happened, but it was overshadowed by her father's condition at the time. In more detail about the disappearing man, all of his apparel seemed to be the same color, a tan leather type color like he was a cowboy or something, but who knows what it really means. Story number 4. When I was 15, it became common routine to watch my brother for my dad while he worked. He was a single father and needed all the help he could get at times. It was common for me to take care of my brother by myself for most of the week. The worst part was the house we lived in. It was nonetheless spooky and frightening at times. Weird noises would come from the basement, footsteps would flood the stairs late at night, and even voices would come from unexpected places around the house. As you grow up with things like this, you get used to them. They can even be entertaining when friends come over to stay and soon realize that all the things you told them about weren't lies and you're not crazy. On this one particular night, my father was working a night shift, and of course, I was to watch my little brother. Nothing unusual. He was easy to maintain. Video games and TV was all he would do until bedtime. His room was in the basement, so besides coming up to get food, I didn't see him much. On the night in question, everything was normal until I heard a knock on my bedroom door. I was looking at things on my laptop, probably browsing MySpace or something. I got up to answer the door, only to see my brother wide-eyed and nervous. Him being only 9 at the time, I figured he'd had a bad dream. I asked what was wrong with him, and he said he'd heard something coming from a small window in the basement over his bed. Reassuring him it was probably just a dream, I sent him back to bed and let the thought leave my mind. About 20 minutes later, he knocks on my door again, this time with a bang. I hop up real fast, slightly frightened this time. I open the door swiftly, and he says, "Something is down there." All of a sudden, the lights shut off. My heart begins beating through my chest as my little brother begins to cry. I pull him in my room, and luckily we had a flashlight lantern in my closet. I quickly get it out and pray the batteries are still good. To my luck, they were. I turned it on to the brightest setting, and I started to walk over to the windows of my bedroom. Mind you, my room was upstairs, and my brother's was in the basement where the breakers were. I looked across the street from my blinds, and every street light and neighbor had lights on. It was just our home that was in darkness. Me being the brave older brother, I told him that I would go flip the breakers. He begs me not to go. I could hear in his voice he was terrified. So I asked him, finally, what exactly did he see? Well, he says he was lying still in his bed when he kept hearing the voice or sound coming from that window. His eyes were shut, trying to sleep and ignore the sounds, when it suddenly got louder, and he opened his eyes to find a long, fingered hand reaching for his face. That's when he ran upstairs to get me, and the power went out. I continued to be brave and told him that I would go check out the house to show him that everything was okay, when suddenly I could hear footsteps walking through the hallway and into the kitchen, before loud stomping went down the stairs and back up them. These footsteps followed the same path for what seemed like hours. I was in shock. I knew the doors and windows were locked. I knew that no one could possibly be in the house besides us. I knew that we have had experiences with the house with the paranormal, but nothing like this. I creeped to my bedroom door, my brother still crying and almost in a fetal position, begging me not to open it. I grabbed the door handle and turned. I pulled the door open to the darkness of the house. I poked my head out when we heard a scream, not just any kind of scream, but a scream of terror coming from the basement. I slammed the door and locked it, heart pounding through my chest. My brother is hysterically crying at this point. And then the lights turn back on. I gather my thoughts, go to the back bedroom, and I grab a shotgun. I start flipping on every light in the house before making my way to the basement, only to find nothing. Many more occurrences have happened since, but this particular moment will always stick with me. This brings us to the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed these stories, then hit the like button, leave a comment, press the notification bell, and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in our next story.